You made cats millionaires out here, man. A lot of us can't say that.
Right now, as you're watching this, federal agents are quietly building a case that could land one of Memphis's biggest rap stars in some serious trouble. We're talking about Mario Mims, better known as Yo Gotti, a man who turned his hustle into a multi-million-dollar empire while rumors swirled that he was mixed up in some heavy street situations that shook the city. Investigators believe they've got evidence connecting Gotti to a string of violent incidents, including what they call a setup against his longtime rival, Young Dolph. They're claiming he financed street operations, gave green lights on moves, and turned Memphis into a zone of chaos. But the wild part, he's still out here performing, dropping tracks, and running his label like it's business as usual. But here's where it gets deep. The pressure's building, and by the end of this, you'll see exactly why the feds view Yo Gotti as one of the most watched figures in the rap industry. This ain't just about rap tension anymore. This is about what officials believe could be a full-blown organization moving under the cover of music. And the feds, they're not playing games with this one. Stay locked in because we're about to uncover it all. The moves, the money, the connections, and why Gotti's situation might be heating up fast. Let's get into it. Now, before we talk about why the feds are zeroing in on him, we gotta rewind and see how Mario Mims became the Yo Gotti we all recognize today. Mario Centel Gittin Mims was born in Memphis, Tennessee back in 1981. Growing up in the Ridgecrest apartments wasn't easy. That area had a tough reputation, and only the strongest made it out. It was the kind of place that either built you up or broke you down, no exaggeration. Memphis in the 80s and 90s was on a whole different level. The city was struggling, jobs were scarce, poverty was deep, and young people didn't have many paths to success. For Mario, music became his lifeline, his way to escape what was happening around him. But even as he started to rise, the streets never really left his story. They were part of who he was. By the late 1990s, Gotti started making waves in the local rap scene. His early mixtapes turned heads because they weren't just songs. They were real reflections of what he saw growing up. He rapped about the grind, about avoiding trouble, and about surviving in a city that could swallow you whole.
I got a unique story, you know what I'm saying? Like, again, I see a lot of artists that complains about nobody helped them. Oh, my hood didn't help me, my city didn't support me, the radio didn't support me. That ain't my story. My story like the totally opposite. Like, I probably was like the only or the last in my hood that didn't really fuck with the rap shit or believe it. You know, all my were pushing me like, bro, you can do this shit, bro, go do this shit, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
but this is where things start getting real interesting. While other rappers were only talking about that life, some say Gotti was still connected to it even as his career started taking off. Law enforcement began to notice he still had ties to people from the Memphis street scene. To them, it wasn't just music. They believed his real experiences were mixing into his lyrics. The feds had their eyes on him early, tracking patterns that made them think there was more to the story. Money was coming in from places that didn't quite match his music earnings. Associates were getting locked up for serious charges, and Gotti's name in the streets carried a weight that went far beyond just being a rapper. But to really understand his rise, you gotta understand what Memphis hip-hop culture is all about. This city birthed icons like 3 6 Mafia, the group that stamped Memphis on the national map. They brought that raw southern sound, dark, bold, and full of energy, straight into the mainstream. But in Memphis, success always came with a cost. The rap game here was deeply tied to neighborhood rivalries and real-life trauma. Every block had its own artists, its own squad, and its own rivalries. Music wasn't separate from the streets, it was the streets, just turned to beats. When Gotti started calling himself the king of Memphis, it wasn't just about record sales, it was about respect. In that city, being the king meant your name carried power. People stood behind you and your words meant something real. And Gotti, he wasn't playing with that title. He took it personally and lived it like it was law. And according to investigators, Gotti was always ready to handle his business.
bro, I remember I used to go to New Orleans to holler at Birdman and them. We used to wait 10 hours just to talk to him.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, imagine if you tell an artist come meet you today and it take you 10 hours to talk to him.
They gonna feel
3 6 Mafia had already earned their spot as the godfathers of Memphis rap. They won an Oscar, went multi-platinum, and had the full respect of their city. So when a young artist named Yo Gotti came up claiming that same throne, things got real tense, and that tension lasted for years. But that situation with 3 6 Mafia, that was just the warm-up. The real storm started when another rising star stepped up, and he wasn't bowing down to nobody. His name was Young Dolph. Everything flipped when Adolphus Turnstone, better known as Young Dolph, hit the Memphis scene. Born in Chicago, but raised in Memphis, Dolph represented everything Gotti said he was, only Dolph did it with full independence. While Gotti had major label backing and built CMG into a powerhouse, Dolph stayed true to his own lane with Paper Route Empire, running his own show and calling all the shots. He wasn't just winning, he was doing it completely on his own terms. And that independence, it started to shake Gotti's image in a major way. The tension between them first showed up around 2014 after Dolph dropped High Class Street Music 4, Amarin and Gangsta. During an interview on Sway in the Morning, when asked about possibly signing with Gotti CMG, Dolph made it very clear he wasn't interested at all. Here was a younger artist from his own city turning down his offer and basically saying he didn't need CMG to win. That kind of move don't sit right with someone who built his whole image on being the boss, the one everybody had to go through. Gotti had crowned himself the king of Memphis, but Dolph was showing the world you could make it big in the same city without answering to him. That's when things started getting real personal. This wasn't just about music anymore. It was about pride, territory, and who really held the power. And in that city, disputes like that don't just fade away with a few songs. They turn into real tension that spreads fast. Investigators had their eyes on this rivalry from the start, watching as it shifted from simple competition to something far more serious. They began to track movements, watch social media, and keep tabs on both sides.
Your choice game, I don't know who this shit like Yankees, like you got a mean general manager or some shit, man. Because the way you pick these artists and the way you put people on in this day and time, you don't see that shit like that. An artist of your, caliber just executing and putting a team together. I'm talking about a solid players. This ain't no bullshit. This ain't no fluff around. Whether it's Block Boy, everybody that you came through with, these motherfuckers was hitting shit out the park.
What they claimed to have found was a steady pattern of heated situations that eventually led to bigger investigations and major law enforcement involvement. By 2016, things were completely out in the open. Everyone knew the tension was real. That same year, Dolph announced his debut album would be called King of Memphis, a direct challenge to Gotti, who'd been calling himself that for years. This was no longer just a rap rivalry. It had turned into a full-on battle for respect. On February 11, 2016, Dolph jumped on Twitter and dropped a message that shook the city. Bro went from being my #1 fan and wanting to sign me to being my biggest hater.
You made cats millionaires out here, man. A lot of us can't say that.
Is even more deeper from his standpoint because he was an artist. A lot of motherfuckers ain't an artist, so they don't have that ego to push to the side.
At that point, this wasn't just a music feud anymore. It was real-life drama unfolding in the streets, and investigators were locked in, watching closely. What made this moment even heavier was that Black Youngster wasn't just any local rapper. He was signed to CMG, which meant everything he did could reflect back on Gotti and his entire label. When someone tied to your brand is moving like that, authorities start asking big questions. They wanted to know who planned it, who funded it, and who gave the go-ahead. And according to federal sources, every road they followed seemed to point back toward Yo Gotti's circle. This moment reportedly marked the beginning of a serious federal probe into CMG, not just as a label, but as what they believed could be a coordinated organization operating under the cover of music. Dolph was in Charlotte for the CIAA basketball tournament when things took a shocking turn. His bulletproof SUV was hit with more than 100 rounds in broad daylight. Let's be real, this wasn't some random street incident. It looked like a planned hit carried out during one of the biggest black college events in the country. Whoever was behind it knew Dolph's schedule and location down to the minute. That's how precise it seemed. Soon after, 3 men were arrested: Black Youngster, Frederick Black, and Enes Be'ana. They were charged with serious offenses, including firing into occupied property and conspiracy. But here's where things got strange. Black Youngster's charges were suddenly dropped. The official reason given was insufficient evidence, but people close to the case started whispering that there might have been pressure from higher up to make it go away. Word on the streets was that someone with major influence had pulled a few strings, and that someone had the kind of power to make big legal problems disappear. Dolph survived the attack only because he had invested in the bulletproof vehicle, a move that literally saved his life that day. He was staying alert, moving carefully, and making sure he was protected at all times. But the message behind that ambush was loud and clear. Somebody wanted to send a warning. Instead of backing off, Dolph came back even stronger. He dropped tracks like 100 Shots and Bulletproof, where he boldly addressed the situation and made it clear he wasn't afraid. Dolph wasn't scared. If anything, he was more motivated than ever. But while he kept pushing forward, federal investigators were quietly keeping tabs on everything happening. They noticed how fast certain charges were dropped and how some of the suspects were tied to CMG, and how the entire situation seemed way too organized to be random. Before long, they were building a detailed file that would later become part of a federal RICO-style investigation. What really grabbed their attention was how coordinated the attack looked. This didn't seem like some street argument that spun out of control. It looked planned, funded, and executed with precision. Moves like that don't happen without someone organizing things behind the scenes. And investigators wanted to know exactly who was in charge. They started asking hard questions. Who set this up? Who paid for it? And who had enough power to make serious charges just disappear? Every trail they followed seemed to circle back towards CMG and Yo Gotti. Then, just a few months later, on September 26, 2017, another major incident went down, this time in Hollywood, outside the Loews Hotel. Dolph was walking out of the building when 3 men reportedly confronted him in the valet area, and things turned chaotic in seconds. According to police reports, a fight broke out. Dolph ended up on the ground and shots were fired multiple times. Members from both sides reportedly got into an argument that quickly turned into chaos. This wasn't just some random street drama. Both groups were staying at the same luxury hotel in Hollywood, and investigators believed it was way too coincidental. According to federal reports, this might have been another planned attack that went sideways when Dolph fought back and managed to survive yet again. Corey McClendon, one of Gotti's known associates, was arrested near the scene shortly after the incident. Police even found a gold Escalade linked to the suspects not far away. But just like what happened in Charlotte, the case fell apart. The charges didn't stick, McClendon was released, and nobody ended up facing official charges. 2 major attacks on Dolph, and both times, the people involved walked free. That's when federal investigators started asking the real questions. How does someone survive 2 serious and well-organized attacks, and who has enough influence to make charges just disappear? The pattern was becoming hard to ignore. To them, this didn't look like some random street beef. It looked like a calculated effort to remove Young Dolph from the picture, backed by serious money and serious connections. What made things even more suspicious was Gotti's public reaction afterwards. Instead of stepping back or condemning the violence, his social media posts, lyrics, and interviews made it seem like he wasn't too bothered by what had happened. That behavior caught the feds' attention big time. They started profiling Gotti as someone who allegedly used intimidation and aggression as tools to protect his empire. Investigators believed he viewed Dolph not just as competition, but as a real threat to his entire operation. And that threat, in their eyes, had to be removed. To really understand how deep this story goes, we gotta talk about Anthony Mims, better known as Big Juke, Yo Gotti's older brother. While Gotti was the public face of CMG, sources say Juke was the power behind the scenes, the one who handled things when the business got serious. According to federal investigators, Big Juke wasn't just Yo Gotti's brother, he was the one who made key decisions when problems needed to be handled or situations needed to be fixed. During the Young Dolph murder trial, prosecutors claimed that Big Juke allegedly offered $100,000 connected to the case, a shocking claim that had the courtroom on edge. Think about that for a second. That's not some small-time street tension anymore. That's high-level coordination. This is when authorities began viewing CMG not just as a record label, but as a potential structured organization operating under the cover of music. Investigators started painting a picture of how the group might have been organized. Gotti at the top making executive decisions, Big Juke managing things on the ground, and below them, a network of artists, affiliates, and local figures moving in sync. To them, it looked less like a label and more like a well-oiled operation with layers of control and influence. Artists allegedly weren't signed just for their talent. Some were chosen for their street credibility and their ability to hold things down when necessary. Federal agents began connecting dots between CMG artists and a series of violent incidents around Memphis, noticing a pattern that made them dig even deeper. Every time someone clashed with CMG, something seemed to happen. whether it was sudden trouble, intimidation, or people around them getting caught up in drama. Federal investigators believe Big Juke was the link between CMG's official business moves and its alleged underground activities. They claimed he was the middleman, someone who could organize things behind the scenes, handle logistics, and coordinate with street connections, all while keeping his brother Yo Gotti's name clear of direct involvement. But that kind of protection doesn't last forever, because when you're surrounded by chaos, eventually it circles back. On November 17th, 2021, tragedy struck when Young Dolph stopped by Makeda's Homemade Cookies in South Memphis, one of his favorite local spots, a place where he always felt comfortable and safe. What he didn't know was that danger was already waiting nearby, and what investigators believe was a carefully planned ambush that had been set up for weeks. Around 12:30 p.m., two masked individuals approached and opened fire on Dolph's car. Reports say he was hit multiple times, a devastating scene that shocked the entire city of Memphis and the hip-hop world. This wasn't seen as some random act of violence. It was a direct, cold attack that looked like it was meant to send a strong message. The shooters fled in a white Mercedes coupe that had been reported stolen weeks before, but they made several key mistakes that would later help authorities track them down. Surveillance cameras captured clear footage, phone data placed them near the scene, and most importantly, there were witnesses who saw what happened. Investigators believe this was a highly organized hit, something carried out by people who had inside information and serious planning behind them. This wasn't a crime of passion. It looked like a calculated move executed with precision. On January 11, 2022, U.S. Marshals arrested 23-year-old Justin Johnson, also known locally as rapper Straight Drop. Just 5 days later, another suspect, Cornelius Smith, was taken into custody. Both were charged with first-degree murder in connection to the case, but the biggest arrest came later. 43-year-old Hernandez Govan. Prosecutors accused Govan of being the main coordinator behind the attack. Now here's where things took a wild turn. Court documents revealed that Govan allegedly had direct ties to Big Juke in the CMG circle. During the trial, evidence came out showing that CMG funds had reportedly been used to cover $50,000 in legal fees for the accused shooters, and that detail raised major eyebrows. Think about it. Why would a music label pay for the defense of people accused in such a high-profile case, unless there was something deeper going on? That payment became one of the key pieces of evidence investigators used to suggest that CMG might have had some kind of indirect involvement in the situation. The first person to get caught in the chaos was local comedian Darian D. Money Childs, who made the mistake of posting jokes online about Dolph's passing. Just a week later, he was tragically killed, and people took that as a chilling message. Disrespect Dolph's legacy, and there would be consequences. Then came another hit close to the case, a rapper known as Big Nusky, who had ties to Straight Drop. He was fatally shot at the New Horizon River Apartments, and the streets immediately started talking. Everyone believed it was part of the ongoing retaliation linked to Dolph's murder. But through all of this, one name stood out as the biggest target: Big Juke. Rumors around Memphis said that Paper Route Empire believed Juke had been involved in planning what happened to Dolph, and they were reportedly waiting for the perfect moment to strike back. Meanwhile, federal investigators were quietly watching everything unfold, taking notes on each new incident, each retaliation, and every sign that the violence was spreading beyond the original feud. The aftermath of Dolph's death hit Memphis hard. The city's crime rate jumped and tensions split neighborhoods apart. Young people started picking sides, CMG or Paper Route Empire, and too many were settling their problems with violence instead of peace. What started as a feud between two rap crews had now turned into something much bigger, shaking the whole community. What made this wave of retaliation even more dangerous was how planned it seemed. This wasn't random street chaos. It was organized revenge carried out by people who had money, influence, and connections. Federal investigators eventually realized this wasn't just a rap rivalry anymore. This had grown into something far bigger. What they were seeing looked like two powerful groups locked in a full-blown street war, with Memphis caught right in the middle. The violence had gotten so serious that a special federal task force was created to step in. Their goal was to track both sides, gather evidence, and build cases that could potentially fall under RICO laws. meaning they were now investigating both groups as organized operations. But the biggest act of retaliation was still on the way, and when it finally hit, it shook the entire city. On January 13th, 2024, everything reached its breaking point. That day, Big Juke attended the funeral of his uncle, Eric Bone, a man who had once been a major figure in Memphis and was seen as a respected OG in the community. After the service, family and friends gathered at Peen's Restaurant and Event Center for the repast. Growing up, both Gotti and Juke looked up to their Uncle Eric like a father figure. He was known for his influence, his business savvy, and his legacy in Memphis. His passing hit the brothers hard, and the funeral brought hundreds of people together. Friends, family, and even out-of-towners all showing love and respect. Both brothers arrived with heavy security, trying to stay safe in a city still tense from everything that had gone down. Strangely, just hours before the funeral, Juke made a chilling Instagram post that read, "Stay alert to stay alive. Watch your back at all times." And looking back, that message felt hauntingly real. At about 4:15 p.m., as Juke sat in his Escalade with his mother in the back seat, a white Ford Explorer reportedly pulled up right beside them. And what happened next would change the story forever. The shooters reportedly rolled down their windows and opened fire in broad daylight. In the chaos, Juke's mother managed to escape the vehicle and run for safety, but Juke didn't make it out. The man investigators believed had once played a role in organizing moves against Young Dolph was now gone, taken out in the same violent way he was accused of directing towards others. It was a shocking twist that hit Memphis hard. For Yo Gotti and CMG, this was the biggest loss they had ever faced. Juke wasn't just his brother. He was Gotti's mentor, his protector, and the person who taught him how to navigate both business and the streets. Growing up, Juke had always been the one to watch over him. And now, with his passing, Gotti was left completely exposed, both emotionally and publicly. The streets of Memphis lit up after news of the shooting spread. Some saw it as karma catching up, while others were heartbroken, realizing that the city's hip-hop culture was being torn apart by endless violence. What was once a battle between artists had turned into something much darker, taking lives and leaving Memphis divided. For federal investigators, Juke's death was another major piece of evidence in their growing case. Every incident, every act of retaliation, every organized move was stacking up in support of their theory the CMG wasn't just a record label, but an organized network operating under the surface.
Here's why the feds became so focused on Yo Gotti. They believe CMG might fit the structure of a criminal organization under the RICO Act, the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Law, originally designed to take down organized crime families. Under the RICO Act, if investigators can prove that a group has been involved in a repeated pattern of criminal activity, they can charge everyone tied to that organization, even if certain members didn't personally commit the crimes. And according to the feds, that's exactly what they believe they can do with CMG. Authorities have been digging deep, looking into everything from violent incidents to possible money movement, financial misconduct, and even reports of witness intimidation. Their theory? That Yo Gotti allegedly used his record label as a front to disguise illegal dealings, similar to how organized groups have historically used legitimate businesses to hide what was really going on behind the scenes. The feds have reportedly been working this case for years, pulling together financial records, tracking money transfers, and collecting phone recordings between alleged CMG associates. They've even gotten statements from cooperating witnesses who claim to have first-hand knowledge of what's been happening. One of the biggest pieces of evidence investigators keep coming back to is that $50,000 payment reportedly used to cover the defense fees of the suspects accused in Young Dolph's murder. In court, that kind of financial connection can be used to show consciousness of guilt, basically proof that someone was aware of wrongdoing and tried to cover it up. On top of that, federal agents have documented multiple patterns, noting that whenever someone publicly clashed with CMG, someone serious seemed to follow soon after. They don't see it as coincidence, they see it as a pattern of coordinated retaliation. The investigation has now stretched across several years, with agents interviewing witnesses, tracking financial trails, and piecing together what they believe could link CMG to several high-profile crimes across Memphis. Sources close to the investigation claim that several cooperating witnesses are now prepared to testify against Yo Gotti. These insiders are reportedly ready to reveal what they know, from how CMG allegedly operated to who gave the green light on certain moves and how key decisions were made behind closed doors. But here's the catch. The biggest challenge for prosecutors will be making sure these witnesses hold up in court. Defense lawyers are going to go hard, questioning their motives, their credibility, and whether they cut deals with the government to save themselves. Still, if what these witnesses say lines up with physical evidence, like records, wiretaps, or messages, it could be a serious blow for Gotti. Remember, federal prosecutors don't usually move forward with RICO-style cases unless they're confident they can win, and the feds have a 95% conviction rate. The fact that they're still gathering evidence means they believe they've got something big in the works. But here's where things get even deeper. Young Dolph wasn't the only artist who ever had issues with Gotti. His tension with 3 6 Mafia goes way back to the early 2000s, when both sides were claiming to be the true king of Memphis. That rivalry got heated fast. At Crunkfest 2004, Gotti and roughly 40 members of his crew reportedly stormed the stage wearing shirts that said Triple Mafia, a direct shot at 3 6 Mafia. That night ended in total chaos. Fights broke out and things spilled into the parking lot with major confrontations. Over the years that followed, several people linked to 3 6 Mafia were reported missing or found dead. And investigators are now looking into whether there's any connection between those incidents and CMG's network. Federal agents also believe CMG maintained ties with multiple Memphis-based street groups, including one known as the True La Mafia. This story is far from over. The case is still active and more twists are coming. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next part, because this is not the end of the CMG investigation, and what's coming next might just shock everyone.